All right, forget everything you know about silicon chips and lines of code. Today, we're going to look at a lab that is literally growing computers from mushrooms. And no, this is not science fiction. This is the very real future of what some people are calling biological wetware. So it all starts with this one kind of wild question. Can a fungus think? Or maybe a better way to put it is, can it compute? I know it sounds crazy, but the answer could totally change how we look at technology forever. So yeah, let's dive right in. And look, this is not just some philosophical thought experiment. We're talking about real research here. The guy leading the charge is Andrew Adamatsky, the director of the Unconventional Computing Laboratory. And his goal? Well, in his own words, it's as direct as it is mind-bending. He says, I'm planning to make a brain from mushrooms. Okay, so a computer made of fungi. I mean, it just sounds impossible, right? How on earth do you go from a mushroom you might see in the woods to an actual piece of functioning tech? Well, the answer starts in a really, really unusual lab. So, I want you to picture this. You walk into the Unconventional Computing Lab. At first glance, everything seems pretty normal. Desks, speakers, lab equipment. But then, you see it. A standard motherboard, the kind of thing that's the heart of every computer, but with these tiny oyster mushrooms literally sprouting right out of its circuits. It's this wild, surreal mix of biology and tech, and that's exactly what this research is all about. You see, the real magic here isn't in the mushroom cap, the part we all recognize. It's what's going on underneath, in something called the mycelium. Think of it like the root system of the fungus, this huge, branching, web-like network. And in these new computers, it's playing this incredible dual role. It's not just the wire, it's also the processor. It's the conductor and the component, all rolled into one. Okay, but why? I mean, really, why go through all this trouble? We have supercomputers that literally fit in our pockets. It's a fair question, and the answer brings us to the fundamental limits of silicon itself. Think about it. Our classic computers are unbelievably powerful, but they see the world in a very rigid way. Everything is either a 1 or a 0. It's binary. And that's fantastic for a lot of problems for sure. But the real world? It's messy, it's complex, it's analog. Most of the stuff that happens out here just doesn't fit neatly into that binary box. So let's just put these two approaches side by side for a second. On one hand, you've got our classical computers with that rigid, binary 1 and 0 system. But on the other hand, you have these unconventional computers. They use living systems to try and model the complexity of the real world. So you see, this isn't just a minor upgrade. We're talking about a completely different way of thinking about computation. All right, so how does this actually work? How does a fungus speak the language of computation? How do you get from this living, growing network to actually processing information? It seems like a huge leap. Well, this is where the big breakthrough happened. Adamatsky's lab found something incredible. In his own words, we found actually that mushrooms produce action potential-like spikes, the same spikes as neurons produce. I mean, just let that sink in for a moment. These fungi are using the same basic electrical language that the neurons in our own brains use to talk to each other. So how do they actually tap into this fungal conversation? Well, the process is surprisingly simple, really. First, they mix the mycelium with something for it to grow on, like hemp shavings. Then they just let it grow and colonize that substrate. After that, they insert electrodes into the network. And finally, they can both stimulate it and record its electrical responses. It's basically a living, breathing circuit board. And this spiking activity, that's the key to the whole thing. These little electrical signals are the language of the mycelium network. And just like with our own digital electronics, the researchers can start to assign meaning to them. So the presence of a spike could be a 1, and the absence of a spike could be a 0. Suddenly, you have the foundation of a biological binary system. But wait, it gets even cooler. Get this. If you repeatedly send a signal between 2 points in the mycelium, that connection actually gets stronger. The conductivity goes up. It becomes like a preferred pathway for the signal. What is that? Well, it's essentially a form of memory. It is incredibly similar to how our own brain cells form habits and learn new things. Just mind-blowing. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds a bit random, but this research didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's actually built on more than a decade of work with another really strange organism. It's a journey that takes us from slime to spores. You see, before he even touched a mushroom, Adamatsky spent a whole decade, from 2006 to 2016, working with slime molds. And all the lessons they learned from that research directly paved the way for the fungal computing we're seeing today. It's a really clear evolution of this idea of wetware. And the results they got from that slime mold research, they were just astonishing. I mean, these super simple organisms proved they could solve ridiculously complex problems. We're talking finding the shortest path through a maze, solving network design problems, even imitating road transport networks and controlling robots. This was the proof of concept they needed. Biocomputing wasn't just a cool theory anymore. It was a practical reality. So, okay, we've gone from slime molds to fungi. What's the end game here? What's the ultimate vision? What could a fully grown biological brain actually do? Now, let's be really clear about one thing. Fungal computers are incredibly slow compared to silicon, but that's kind of not the point. You have to look at the advantages. They can be self-regenerating, meaning they can literally heal themselves. They're reconfigurable, they can grow new connections on the fly, and maybe most importantly, they use a tiny, tiny fraction of the energy. The goal here isn't to replace your laptop, it's to create something entirely new. And it's not like they're just working with one type of mushroom either. The team is testing a whole garden's worth of different species. You've got your common oyster fungi, but also ghost fungi, bracket fungi, all the way to the kind of creepy-sounding caterpillar fungi. They're trying to figure out which ones have the best knack for computation. It's really important to remember, though, that we are still in the super early days of all this. Right now, it's all about feasibility studies. The main goal is just to prove that you can create the most basic building blocks of a computer, the fundamental logic gates and circuits, using nothing but living mycelium. But the long-term vision, that's where it gets really exciting. The ultimate goal is to one day grow advanced computers and control devices. Imagine a future where this living wetware works in harmony with our traditional hardware and software, creating a totally new, integrated kind of technology. And all of this leaves us with one last fascinating question to think about. A computer that can grow, that can heal itself, and that can adapt to its environment. What kinds of problems could a living computer solve that our current machines can't even begin to touch? The possibilities? Well, they're as vast and interconnected as the mycelium networks themselves.